Hello and welcome to a special bonus edition of It's Not Just Cricket. Hi, it's Matt. Just me today. Azim is having this one off, but I've got a much better replacement for him. I've got a guy who's not only a T20 World Cup winner, he played for India almost 60 times, IPL legend, I think we can call him that, played many years with a lot of success in the IPL. First-class cricket, you name it. An all-round good guy, a guy that I worked with very recently out in Sri Lanka when India were touring there and we were commentating together. Robbie Uthappa, how are you, mate?
Matt, I'm awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure. It really, really is to talk to you. I should just say at the beginning, before I go on, make sure you subscribe or download if you are listening or watching us on YouTube. All of that really helps. Follow us at INJC Pod as well. So where are you now? Are you in Dubai?
Yes, I'm at home, yeah, in Dubai. Yeah. We
Yeah, you
relocated.
made the big move there.
Yeah, we made the move about a couple of years ago, almost 2 years ago. We in fact have a lot of English people moving here as well, and if I'm not wrong, we have quite a few guys here, and they're making the second bases here. Some people even moving here all together. So yeah, it's a great place to live. It's an incredible place to raise a family here.
Yeah, well, I hope all the English people don't ruin it for you eventually, which is what we tend to do when we go abroad. Now, listen, you and I met in Sri Lanka, and I didn't know quite what to expect from you, Robbie, but I think I was pleasantly surprised at how chilled out and spiritual you are. You're quite a spiritual guy.
I don't know if you can call me spiritual. Yeah, maybe. And I have a small spiritual side to me, and uh, it's been a journey to get there. I've tethered on the end of a spectrum of being like a Bible bashing, religious, absolutely religious guy, and I carry like these handheld Bibles. Like it's not a Bible, but I carry like handheld Bibles and kind of give it to a lot of my like whoever I met. So I went from that spectrum to being
Really?
completely kind of agnostic, and then kind of fell in the middle. And I've had a few God experiences along the way. I've asked for them and I've actually had them, and it's kind of taken me on this journey where today I wouldn't call myself religious, but I would certainly call myself spiritual and someone who shares a relationship with God.
Yeah. And philosophical.
Yeah, you could say that. I'm quite philosophical.
So were you like that as a player, or did you change after you finished playing?
Well, it's a this is a misconception I have to keep kind of correcting. I think along the way, I haven't finished playing. I want to play for as long as I possibly can play. I've only resigned from
Right.
Indian cricket to grant myself the opportunity to play cricket outside of India, because we have that rule in India where if you play cricket in India, you can't play cricket anywhere else outside of India. And I really consider myself a student of the game, and I really want to expose myself to different conditions, different tournaments, different challenges, different cultures, to kind of enrich myself not just as a human being but also as an athlete. Because, see, at some point I want to be a coach. I want to be a batting coach. I have to have a ground to stand
Yeah.
on. I have to have the exposure to different conditions in different parts of the world to be able to add value to, say, my pupils or clients who are who I'm working with, and which is why retired. I'm saying, but resigned from all forms of Indian cricket, so as to go out and play cricket as much as I can. And the fire still burns very brightly, Matt, to win championships. And I really want to play the one of the things I thought I'd easily play once I called time on my Indian cricket was that I thought I'd come and play the 100. I thought I'd play the blast. I'll be able to help teams win those championships and all that. Fortunately, none of that's happened for some reason, but I'm hopeful. I'm hoping that I will be able to get in and play and add some value and win championships there.
Okay, hot off the press then. Robbie is still available. Anyone listening out there who wants to sign him up, he's ready. He can still strike a ball. You can get him into your team if you fancy it. Right, okay. If you look back at your international career, though, and like the early part of your career, that 2007 T20 World Cup win, which was such a seminal moment, wasn't it? Because a lot of people say that's when India got T20, and then the whole of the IPL exploded after that. And India's whole approach, the fans' approach to cricket, almost changed from that moment. Is that easily the highlight of your career so far?
One of the highlights of my career, I wouldn't say the biggest highlight of my career, was one of the highlights of my career. I've had plenty, to be very honest, as a cricketer. I've been through lots of lows, a lot of highs, and a lot of peaks and valleys that have really enriched my life. And I would have to say that certainly that had a big part in my cricketing career, and had a massive role in shaping what came about to be afterwards as well. um, and I count myself very fortunate, and very grateful for this, that I've been able to be a part of teams that changed the dimension of Indian cricket, I believe, and has brought about the kind of culture that we have in India as far as cricket is concerned, that exists today. Right, today, we're not the docile cricketers that you met in the early '80s and '90s and early 2000s. We kind of take the bull by its horns right now, take any challenge on head on, and I think all of that happened when, for us, I think winning that World Cup was one big piece of that puzzle. But I think winning the CB series after that in Australia in 2008 was a massive piece of that puzzle. And I truly believe that actually changed the dimension of Indian cricket in a massive way. It gave us the conviction to believe that we can beat anybody at their home. And I think that belief kind of propagated a lot of what exists today.
So, what is it like then being an international cricketer in India? Because it's so different from everywhere else. There are just so many good players going for so few spots if you want to be in the Indian side, particularly if you're a batter. So, if
Yeah.
if you have, say, 3 or 4 bad games or games where you don't score, you lose your spot. Is it very much a cutthroat environment?
It certainly is. I think it's also because of the volume that exists in our country, right? I think it's human nature, I'd imagine. So it's a volume versus value game, right? Now, where there's volume, there's very little value, and where there's no volume, there is a lot of value. It's basic human nature, and unfortunately, we as cricketers here in India, and who are trying and pursuing a career to play international cricket in India, often have to navigate through that space of lack of value. As a human being, as an athlete, as a cricketer, you're very disposable, because of the enormous pool of talent that exists. We, as in you and I, are from the same generation, and you and I both know when the likes of for example, the likes of an Alistair Cook retires, and then you think, oh man, it's going to take a long time to fill that gap, right? So when Sachin Tendulkar retired here, we felt like, oh boy, it's that gap might take decades to fill. But here comes along a young Virat Kohli who, like, you know what, I'll do that, maybe slightly better even. And then suddenly you have just guys coming by the you know by the by the dozens, of that caliber players today. And I think that's also one of the things of Indian cricket. I think we as a people are very cerebral, and if we figure out a way to do something once, then that can be replicated and improved upon by by the people again, and by the younger lot again. They improve upon things, not just repeat things, but improve upon it. So I think the next generation of cricketers from India will be, man, probably words will fall short of, and adjectives will fall short of, how we could describe their achievements in time to come. And again, if cricket remains status quo as far as three versions of the game remaining as it is and all of that, but even that is also evolving as we speak, right? Because cricket's also evolving now. How long does one day cricket last in the ecosystem? Is it only World Cups now, right? And it's only focused on T20s and tests. And what space does T10 have in this whole rigmarole here? It's a whole thing that's happening here. So where does T10 fit in this whole piece of the puzzle? And so I think it's an evolving space. I'm able to, like, for me, correlate AI with cricket quite a bit, because it feels like both are in a very evolutionary kind of space. We kind of figure out whether we'll figure out where the dust settles in perhaps 10 years time.
So when you were playing, and we were just on the cusp of this big change, but things were already changing massively with T20,
Mhm.
and there was all of this competition. When you went out there to bat for India, did you feel that weight of pressure on you because you knew, if you slipped up, if you had a bad trot of 3, 4 innings, someone else would just come in and take your place?
To be very honest, Matt, as a youngster coming through the ranks, I was 20 when I first played for India. I was 21 when I won the World Cup for India. So I was an absolute, and still am an absolute romantic of the game, right? And I think I was blissfully unaware and just like so in love with the game and everything that I was experiencing. I never really thought about it. Maybe my cricket would have turned out way differently if I actually thought about it from that perspective. And probably would have had a longer career because I would have been, in a sense, more self-serving in that sense. But I look back at my career in India and I feel like I have no regrets whatsoever. I'm so glad I was a romantic of the game because I think God's kind of blessed me with with everything that a lot of cricketers after playing for India for 10 years, 15 years don't experience. I've been part of the teams of some really tough losses, and I've been in a contributing part of the team in some massive wins, in a World Cup win, in dimension changing wins that changed the whole perception of Indian cricket. And I consider myself very very grateful. Very lucky, and I'm very grateful for that experience. So I wouldn't exchange it for a thing. I think, but I was just blissfully unaware, and I'm okay with that.
Well, maybe as you got older and you developed, and I know you're a very introspective guy, and you've
Mm.
talked openly since then about you had some struggles with depression, as lots of cricketers have
Sure.
had, and now it's a lot more common to talk about it. So just talk us through that. When did you start feeling or thinking that you had depression, and was it affecting your game as well?
Sure, I had a big impact on not just my game, but how I existed within the game. One of the things I kind of navigated through was, with the IPL coming around, you uh, till that point in cricket, at least in the ecosystem of cricket that I know of, we always existed in a world where you were loyal to your team, beyond default even, you know, um, and you would do anything for your team. So I was one of the first guys to be transferred in franchise cricket in that sense. So I moved from Mumbai Indians to RCB in the second year of the IPL, and that happened like literally 3 weeks before the IPL was going to start. And I didn't want to be transferred whatsoever. I was completely against it, and I said I want no part of it. And but they would have it no other way, so I was transferred, and like I was. It was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my life because, and it also helped me grow a lot, to be honest, in hindsight. But deeply uncomfortable at the time because I've never felt more uncomfortable in my own body. Where I feel like here I am in a team where even though it's the city I'm from, I am from Bangalore. Even though it's the city I'm from, I felt so loyal to Mumbai Indians that I felt like I was cheating on Mumbai Indians even though I was playing for RCB. And the feeling was very visceral. It was disturbing. I just felt uncomfortable in my own body, and it was during that IPL in 2009 when I found myself sitting on the windowsill or a ledge or on the 21st floor of the Santon Sun, or 21st or 23rd floor of the Santon Sun, with my legs dangling, even though I had an absolute fear of heights. And again, just completely unaware, Matt. I had no idea. Like, I was just sitting there. I just kind of found myself there sitting on the ledge. And I was just sitting there, and I was like, a thought went through my head that demanded me to take action. Like, you could end all of this pain by just jumping off. And I remember that thought going through the front of my head, and I'm like, I have to do something. And suddenly I suddenly realized, like, Shh, where am I? And then suddenly the fear of heights kicked in. I quickly jumped back into the room, And I closed the window, and I knew that something's wrong with me. That was my first experience of something being absolutely off with me. And this was well into the IPL, maybe the first, at the end of the first half of the IPL. And that was my first experience of something not being right. And I went through a phase from then 2009 to 2011. I, in India, at that time in India, it was, even now we're at a very nascent stage of mental health and mental well-being in India. And so, talking about seeking help for mental well-being or mental health related issues was frowned upon. There was a lot of stigma attached to it, to the extent that if we ever went, or if people ever caught wind of, for example, me going to a mental health professional, I would be deemed mad. Something wrong with him, so he's gone. He's gone mad, so he's gone to a mental health professional. And also is because we were such a young country, right? And nobody really spoke about existential issues, right? You navigated through, like, our entire country operated from a place of surviving and trying to survive strong, right? And so since the Brits left us, our entire country kind of operated from the point of pure survival as a society. Everyone just operated of pure survival. So they never spoke about, it was not natural for anyone, or it didn't even perhaps exist in that time where you spoke about things that put stress on you, and where if stress was taking a toll on you, and if it led to something, and even if you were aware of it, you chose to ignore it, and or live in denial of it for the most part, irrespective of the implications of that it had on your life or on your family, right? It was never really spoken about. And after I started seeking help, I saw, in 2009 is when I started seeking help, and I saw immediately the kind of improvement it had on me. And then after I went through my whole journey in 2014, I was on medications for clinical depression till 2016 actually. In fact, till just before my son was born, my first, our firstborn. And so I realized that, man, this actually works. This actually helps. And I'm like, why aren't people talking about it? And then I realized, okay, this is why people aren't talking about it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make it a
What
point.
helps? The pills help.
Not the pills, just seeking help, going to a counselor. So I went to a counselor in 2009. I was very fortunate to find an incredible counselor. She played an incredible part of my life in helping me become the man that I am today. It just kind of put me in the right direction. But a lot like, us humans dealing with, say, a course of antibiotics. You started off, and then you feel better after a certain point, and you don't complete the course of antibiotics because you feel better, right? So why take more? I had a similar attitude with mental health related issues, and I started feeling better, and I just stopped going to my counselor. And then before I knew it, things got worse. And before I knew it, I was gone. I reached 2011. I perhaps should share a picture of what I looked like in 2011. And I don't know if I've shown that picture to you, but I was
No.
25, but I looked like I was, my body age, when we calculated it a month later from when I took that photograph, my body age was 50 or 51. And I lost all of my hair. And all of this is like two transplants later, by the way.
I know.
So, I kind of, navigated through all of that phase and got to a really dark place in my life where I even attempted committing suicide. And then I went back to my counselor. I went back. I actually seeked help and stuck the whole 9 yards this time. And then we spoke about a lot of childhood trauma that needed addressing. We addressed a lot of that stuff, and then we realized that was diagnosed with clinical depression, and I had to take SSRIs, which are basically serotonin reuptake medication, because the natural production of serotonin in my body wasn't happening. And so I was on that medication for a good 6-7 years before I got off it eventually. Weaned off it eventually. You can't get off these medications. There's a particular way in which you wean off the medications as well, with the help of a mental health professional. And then so I did all of that. I went the whole 9 yards. And then once I got to the back end of that journey, I was like, I really got to start talking about this, because if not, and I find this, that this issue exists not just amongst cricketers, but again amongst men quite a bit. There is a clear, there's a clear difference between the, uh, and I spoke to a mental health professional recently on a podcast, and he was telling me that men commit suicide way more than women do. It's a known fact. And also, men who are going through clinical depression and end up committing suicide show no signs of mental health issues right up to the point they commit suicide. It's understood after the fact. So for me, it is my life's mission to be able to shed as much light on that as possible, and create an avenue for men to be able to talk about stuff and to still exercise their masculinity in a way where that's healthy, and for them that's empowering, that helps them navigate through their life with self-respect and power.
Yeah, and it's very brave of you to talk up about it as well, because it really helps others that are in that situation. And what you're doing is really commendable. And I totally agree with all of that, because my
There is
girlfriend actually,
Sorry,
my
go on.
girlfriend actually works for a mental health charity which started as a suicide prevention charity for
Sure.
men. So
Yeah.
as you say, yeah, men have actually been more susceptible
Yeah.
than women to suicide over the years, and that's
Sure.
why there are these places that exist. But just going to what you said there, it affects everyone. It affects cricketers too. Do you think that there's something about the game of cricket that makes cricketers slightly more susceptible than maybe some other athletes?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking me this question, because it segues into what I want to share with you a minute ago. Do you know that our sport, cricket, um, globally, across sport in the world, and I mean across sport in the world, has the highest rate of suicides by players and non-players that are related associated with the sport. It's an interesting fact, and when you think about it, you'll be able to understand why. It's because cricket is a very complex game. It's a complex game in as much in the fact that it is as much an individual sport as it is a team sport, and you have to deal with the complexities of trying to win a match for your team whilst competing with your teammate who you're batting with or who you're bowling with. You know, so you're building a partnership whilst still competing with that guy or with that woman, right? And that is a very complex place to exist out of for 10, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years of your life. And it can take you to really dark places, and I can tell you, I've been in those dark places. I've existed there for a really long time. I've lived in a place where I was completely ashamed of myself as a human being, and I went an entire year, Matt, where I didn't look at myself in the mirror, because I'd become so ashamed of who I'd become as a cricketer. No, forget as a human being, just as a cricketer. And then that spoke volumes about how I want to exist as a human being. And so I've navigated through all of that, and which is why I feel so deeply about this, and which is why I this is the line of work that I'm also getting into at this point in time. I'm a certified life coach. I'm doing my certification of an NLP master practitioner.
What does that mean exactly? A life coach?
Well, in the mental health line, if the pecking order is the psychiatrist is the top of the pyramid, a psychologist maybe slightly below that, and then you have counselors and therapists below that, and then we come just maybe a notch before that. We're called life coaches because we help people navigate through achieving objectives and goals in lives, and but whilst trying to do that, you realize that what's holding people back is a lot of existential issues that because of certain experiences in their lives or relationships or something that's happened during the childhood. So that's how we as life coaches kind of fall in the pecking order of mental health personnel. I would say we're a precursor to more professional, more medically related professionals in that line of work. Even though our pursuit is helping individuals or athletes, non-athletes or corporates kind of achieve objectives for themselves in their professional work, more often than not, at the end of the day, you're dealing with human beings who are going through human issues, who have navigated through existential stuff. And then so while you peel back the layers, you realize that a lot of these things kind of root from the same place. So that's how we end up kind of doing mental well-being kind of work as well.
Well, thanks for that. I've always wanted to know what a life coach was.
You're welcome.
Yeah, but I mean, what you say is quite interesting because what you're saying there that a life coach really should be someone who is a trained professional, right?
Yeah,
In
absolutely.
terms of psychology, I think nowadays we live in a world where people can just say, "Okay, well, I want to be a life coach," and they don't really have any qualification, or it's just something that they kind of want to do. But in something like that, it's very important, isn't it? Because it's a role that requires being able to go into someone's mind.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll tell you what. So I believe that in the service-based industry, which this is, right? Even in the medical field, you should only pursue in my opinion, you should only pursue psychology or mental health related stuff if you're truly passionate about it, and if you have a bone to serve other people. If you're self-serving, then it doesn't necessarily work. It has to be done for the right reasons, and the intention of doing something like this or pursuing a career in, say, life coaching or any mental health related space must be done for the absolute right reasons. You can't do it for the sake of making money or earning a living. Sure, do it to earn a living, but it should be something you're deeply passionate about. So do it for the right reasons. It would be what I say, and that makes it that much more important for anyone seeking help to pick the right counselors, to pick the right coaches, to actually have possibly a method of understanding if you can actually work with someone, because this person, uh, like for me, I would say I would call my counselor my closest uh, non-platonic, like in a sense, my closest non-friend friend. Even though this person is not a personal friend, this person is someone that I deeply trust and I can be completely vulnerable with, you know and know that I won't be judged and know that I will be empowered. A good counselor, a good life coach is someone who asks you the right questions, who nudges you in the right direction, and who sees you for who you are, and by being completely unbiased, right? Their interest is only to serve you. And so it becomes really important for anyone seeking help in this line to to actually pick the right people, and go through a few people and choose who you actually kind of truly resonate with.
So working in this space, mental health space, is kind of your life passion at the moment, but you
Hmm.
are still actively involved in the game. You're still
Yeah.
commentating, you're still working in the studio. Let's talk about what could be an incredible Australia India test series then. That first game, India went into it missing key players, missing the captain, missing two of the top three, missing Mohammad Shami, similar to when they were last in Australia, actually, when they're missing loads of key players, and then absolutely decimated Australia in that first game, which I'm sure no one saw it being that one-sided. Do you think they have? Do you think they have wounded Australia psychologically after that? The manner of the win.
100%. And think about what was it, Michael Vaughan who said that, or Nasser Hussain spoke about how there could also be a little kind of, there could be cracks in that Australian setup as well, where Hazelwood said something to the extent of, you'll have to ask the batters that, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with whoever picked up on that, that you don't throw your teammates under the bus, about stuff like that. You kind of stay united, even if you aren't. You hold up that united front. So there's certainly stuff that's going up on there, and that's exactly what we started this podcast off with, right? And it's a volume versus like value game. The volume is so much of the pool of incredible talent is so high in India, and the conviction is so high about beating anybody at their home, and at their backyard. Just gives us the that kind of push to even kind of respond in a situation rather than being reactive. If it's, say, If it was a similar situation in a test match in the mid 90s or in the early 2000s, you could have could have been rest assured that the second innings wouldn't have been a 400 run innings. It could have been, at best a 170, maybe 200 kind of innings, and that team would have probably felt the pressure, right? So what you believe as a unit, you have you either see it as an opportunity where you've gotten that opposition team out for 100, 120, and then you say, you know what, we're going to make sure that we bury these guys, and that is the attitude, and I think, with which this team exists in, and operates from, and which is why we're seeing the kind of performances that we're seeing.
So looking ahead to that second test match, then, what are you hearing? Rohit and Gill, are they possibly both going to be available?
Yeah, I think they will be available, and it'll be interesting to see who makes way. I think Dhruv Jurel will make way for both of them, and where does where do they land is what's interesting to see. I have a feeling, for me, this is what I think should happen. Um, it's interesting, but I think uh, Rohit and KL should bat in the top three, and I think Shubman should come down to number 5 or 6. And I feel like, so it'll be Yashasvi and Rohit or Rahul, and Rohit Rahul at number three. That's the top three. Then number four Virat, number five Gill, number six Rishabh, number seven Washington or Ashwin. Uh, then number 8, 9, 10, 11, you have your Nitish Reddy and 3 fast bowlers. So that's a gun side according to me.
I agree. I agree. And when you mentioned there, you haven't even mentioned Jadeja. You've got Ashwin and Jadeja. But what do you make of them going with Washington ahead of the two great Indian spinners? It was a bold call, wasn't it?
Brave, very brave, and they're backing this youngster. And like, notwithstanding how incredibly well Washington Sundar is playing, I think Ashwin is one of the greatest bowlers of India of all time. And in my book, I wouldn't play a test match without Ashwin till he's done playing. If he can play a test match, I will make him play the test match. If you're playing on, I don't care if you're playing on a marble pitch, I would play Ashwin on that pitch.
So you wouldn't have made the call then, but it seemed to have worked.
It's worked, as in, and I also think that, I don't know if form is a factor in this instance. I don't know if pegged bowler to bowler, Washi is bowling better than Ashwin at the moment. That could be the case, but Washi is also bowling exceptionally well. Washington's, is very accurate. His undercutters are coming out beautifully out of his hand. They're looking very deceptive. So he's been equally effective, and he's batted well as well. So, but if you just go back a series ago, like 5 test matches ago, Ashwin's got wickets by the buckets, and then he's got 100 as well. So it's, for me, it just feels like the guy should play every test match. He deserves to play every test match. He's like, the man's a legend. There's no business in my book. There's no business how he should be missing a test match.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's been hard done by sometimes when India go overseas, and he could have played even more test matches, and he's just a gun, as you say.
Like, I
The
don't
other,
like, even the World Test Championship, both the World Test Championship finals that happened in the last 4 or 5 years, he didn't play both of them. I was just flabbergasted. I was like, how do you not play the guy who's helped you get to the finals in the final? Like, where does common sense escape away in moments like that?
yeah, I agree. I think sometimes you have to play your best team. He is your best spinner,
Yeah.
so it doesn't matter what conditions he should play. Be interesting to see how much he plays in this series. The other big event we've had in the last few days, which you were working on, is the IPL auction, which
Hmm.
isn't a cricket match, but for me, it's box office viewing every year because I think
I
it's
don't like
riveting.
I personally don't like it,
Really? Why?
because I I just think it's very dehumanizing. I think you're making people commodities, and I don't agree with that. I understand the numbers of it. I understand how box office it may feel. I just don't think it's very respectful on a human level. It's great from the outside. If you're not on the inside experiencing it, I can tell you it's traumatic as someone to be a part of the auction. I've been there for 16 years, right? I've never gone unsold, but I cannot imagine what it feels like to go unsold. As in, it's traumatic enough to just be a part of it, right? And you don't know how much you're going to earn. Like as a husband and as a father, you're like what you serve. If you're not playing for the country, that whole that whole gambit of being in the auctions is what puts food on the table for you and your family. So if and God forbid, and there's no science to this, Matt. They haven't figured out a science to this, right? Because you had Sam Curran going at 18 like $2 million last year, and he's gone for $200,000 this year. You know what I mean? There's no science to it. It all depends on where you turn up at the auctions while the auctions are happening, right? So there are some guys who won't even get to play because, for example, like a Mayank Agarwal today, deserves to play in the IPL. He's pegged at his base price is 100,000 or a little less than 100,000 US dollars, but doesn't get picked because none of the teams have the purse to pick a player like him at this point in time. I don't think it's the matter of his ability or people thinking he's over the hill, but I think it's a matter of people being able to afford him or not. And that is, and that's the thing. It's a deeply traumatic experience, and it dents your confidence as a not just as an athlete but also as a human being, because it questions your wherewithal to provide for your family and put food on the table for your family. So it's a deeply dehumanizing process is what I believe it is. And I truly hope that they move to some form of a hybrid, some form where a human being doesn't have to feel like a commodity, and his life, like his what he earns is not put out there for the world to witness, because his worth is being defined on television. You know what I mean? These are very subliminal things, but they're actually being defined on a very human level. They're being defined on television, and it's deeply disrespectful, is what I feel.
So is it therefore, when you're in it and you're watching it, as you say, and you're looking at what my livelihood is going to be like for the following year or whatever, is it quite hard, not to take it personally then? For example, if one year for some reason you're completely undervalued compared to, say, some other players, even though you're playing well.
Of course, deeply. It impacts you so, like that's what I meant by when it says it impacts your confidence in such a massive way. The way you start perceiving yourself, right? It's okay to be on the outside and say, hey, you know what, this doesn't define you. But when you sleep with your soul, or when you wake up with your soul, and then you see yourself in the mirror, the question's gonna pop up, and if it keeps popping up every day, on some level, someday you're gonna say, is it true? And then if you entertain that thought, it could be a spiral downwards, which will be a very tough climb back up from.
Hmm. Thank you, mate. I'm glad that you presented that angle, because I'd never really thought of it strictly in those terms, because not many players speak as openly about it as you did. And I think people listening to this will come away from it with a slightly different view of the auction now after that.
Well, thank
When
you
you
for.
look at,
I think it's an
yeah,
important.
no, I wanted to get your view, and I knew you'd have an interesting view, which you do. And if you look at the franchises now, as you say, sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to the prices. But when you look at the strengths of the squad,
Mhm.
which franchises do you think look like they've bought smartly and looking in the best shape?
Oh, there are plenty franchises that have done a great job. Well, to name a few, I think there are about 5 or 6 that have had an incredible auction. I would rate them on 9 or a 10 on 10, to be very honest. Punjab Kings have had a great auction. They've built a great team on paper. So have the Gujarat Titans. I think they've flown under the radar, very quietly picked a very solid side based on what's available to them at their home ground, the conditions available to them at their home ground. CSK also picked a very clever side, been very true to their nature, going back to players who served them in the past, and the tried and tested for them, right? KKR have gone a different route in the sense of going back and picking the guys who've actually done well for them, and they picked up 92% of the guys that won them the championship last year. So they've done an incredible job. SRH have done a fantastic job, and I think MI have done a great job as well. A couple of teams that missed just a little bit perhaps was, you know, no, oh my God, I also meant to say Delhi Capitals have had a great
Yeah.
auction, to be very honest. They picked such a good side. I think they got slightly lucky, and I think that happened because of the errors that maybe RCB made. I think RCB not picking any of the marquee players in the first two sets cost them on the first day, to the extent where they had to play catch up on the second day. I have to give them credit. They played catch up, really, really well. I think Jacob Bethel is a great player. I just saw a bunch of his videos as well. I think he's incredible talent. I think if he keeps his head on his shoulders, he's got great things coming ahead for him. I felt they missed a few tricks along the way. Did RCB, but at the end, I think they picked a great bowling side, and I think it's your bowling team. It's your bowling team that helps you win championships. It's not the batting. Your batting helps you win matches, but your bowling team and how consistently well your bowling team does is what helps you win championships.
As you mentioned, as you set me right at the beginning of the podcast, you are still playing. So, do you still get the same buzz when you walk out there?
So much. I am absolutely madly in love with this game, and I'm playing everything that's coming my way. To be very honest, like any cricket that comes my way, I'm very keen to play the Pro 40s, the Vitality Blast, the 100. Like I'll if it comes my way, I'll entertain it. I'll entertain the crap out of it. I want to play, and like I said, I consider myself a student of the game. I want to play in different conditions. So anything that comes my way, I play cricket in the US now, in the subcontinent, wherever I get an opportunity. I played one in Birmingham, which is a Legends game. But like again, if that's what's coming, then that's what I'm playing. I'm entertaining everything that's coming my way. But I'm very open to playing a lot of current cricket, and T10s like changed my whole outlook to. It's given me a even further different outlook than T20 did. It's fascinating where you have like you're playing the game, you're playing T10, you're playing T20, and you think, man, this game is quick. You play T10, and you suddenly realize, whoa, I have so much time in T20, man, as a batter. If I played T10, say 8 years ago, when I first began, I promise you, I would have been a very different T20 batter, because just the experience of playing it once, playing the tournament once, opens up spaces in your head that you didn't know existed before. you know Opens up opportunities in your mind about your own game, where you're like, hey, I can actually serve my team even at this position in a T20 game, which you weren't even entertaining before.
Yeah, no, actually, that makes total sense. By the way, if anyone's listening from any of the counties out there, get in touch with Robbie. He's keen for a bit of T20 blast.
Yes, I am.
I'd love to see you at Middlesex, mate. I'm a Middlesex fan. I can see you at Lords in the Middlesex blue.
Yeah, you can tell them I can do a dual role. I can coach batting, and I can also play for them. Coach, come play.
Right. I'll be your agent. I'll negotiate the deal.
Yeah. If I get something after this, I'm giving you something, my friend.
Okay. 5%, 10%. I'm not greedy. Robbie, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Honestly, thank you so much. So enjoyable to talk to you. So thoughtful and so open.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Right, that was Robbie Uthappa. I'm Matt Kabir Floyd. That was It's Not Just Cricket. Don't forget to upload, download. Make sure you follow us as well. Subscribe to our podcast. It all helps with our numbers. We will be back on Wednesday for our usual slot. Azim, hopefully we will be back on board. Thanks very much. We'll see you then.